and welcome to Dipping In Out with Lucy, the podcast that opens up the discussion around domestic abuse. I am very fortunate. My afternoon, Suzanne will be able to tell you what time it is for her because we're on opposite sides of the pond. I'm very fortunate to be sitting down today with Suzanne Shepherd-Post. Now, Suzanne, amongst many other things, is the founder of Shear Haven. I'm not going to explain what Shear Haven is because Suzanne is the person to speak to about this. But what I do know is it's an incredible organisation, and the work that she is doing to change the kind of narrative and understanding of abuse in a day-to-day setting is phenomenal. So, hello, Suzanne.
Hello, Lucy. Thank you so much for having me. I'm
Oh,
thrilled to be here at, I believe it's 10 o'clock in the morning here and what, 4 p.m. there? Or,
it is. It
yeah.
is. Oh, well, you look fabulous. I look like I've been dragged through a hedge backwards, and you look like you just, literally stepped out of a salon, as the adverts
Oh my
say.
goodness. You are too kind. Thank you
Oh,
for, I'm heading from here to the salon, so I have to be somewhat put together and ready for the day. But I'm so grateful to be here. Thank you. As I just said, with the salon, I am also a stylist and salon owner here in Nashville, Tennessee. I'm actually just south of Nashville. Let's be accurate. I'm in Franklin, Tennessee, but I've been in this industry for over 30 years, and I'm also a survivor of domestic violence. And that path as a survivor combined with my experience behind the chair, inspired me to start an initiative called Shear Haven alongside the YWCA here in Nashville and Middle Tennessee. The YWCA is the largest domestic violence service provider here in my region. And so they were the perfect partners to come together and create a training initiative that educates my industry about the signs of domestic violence and the resources that are available in our communities that can help our industry support our clients in a different way. And uh, it's very unique. Our industry cultivates relationships and often long-standing relationships. Some of my clients I've seen every 3 weeks for over 30 years, which
wow.
is more often than a lot of them see their best friends.
Yeah.
It's very special. And so in that setting, in the chair setting, especially when we are also given this gift of touch, I think people sit down and have us put our hands on their head or on their shoulders, and you can feel them just kind of melt into the chair. And in that safe space, conversations that I don't think they even expect start to unfold.
Yeah.
So, utilizing that relationship in a really intentional way has allowed us to reach people not only here in Franklin or Nashville, Tennessee, but across the pond to where you are and far beyond, which I'm so grateful for.
It's incredible work, and I literally just messaged somebody before the episode. I'm really looking forward. I mean, I always look forward to recording episodes, but this for me, and I think with the background I had working for my local domestic abuse charity and some of the initiatives they were looking at, and this is such a big part of it. And I think what you're doing is incredible. And as you've just said, so many of these relationships. I think anybody who's listening, we all know that, especially if we've trusted our hairstylist for, like you say, going on decade after decade. Many of us do stick with the same people because we trust them, because they know us. They probably know more about us than our work colleagues or anybody else. We confide in them, we talk to them, and they become a very big part of our lives. And like you say, it's that connection. And I think for a lot of victims and survivors in those settings, being able to talk, being able to be open and honest and safe, um, and it's that two-way street, isn't it? Because then for the actual professional themselves, if they have somebody disclose and they go, oh my God, I've got no clue what this is about, and I've never experienced it myself, or I don't know enough about it, it can make them feel like they're kind of out of their depth, can't it?
It can. Absolutely. Of course, this initiative started in 2017. And I I can look back over years before that and think of times that people either um, disclosed bits and pieces of their story that had I been a little bit more aware, prepared, I would have handled very differently. I've also, as a person, as a stylist in the salon or as a salon owner, I've overheard conversations that, quite frankly, were not handled well. People that cared so deeply about their clients that they would hear how things were going with their husband or with a boyfriend or girlfriend that they might have been in a new relationship with, and meaning well, given terrible advice about just kick him to the curb, or you need to just stand up to him and tell him that's not okay, or um,
Yeah,
things that we know how important safety planning is, and we know how it's not a typical relationship. There are very typical patterns in an abusive relationship, but it's not a normal relationship that you can just have a reaction like that and have it go well all the time. That
mm,
could be something that seriously puts someone in harm's way.
yeah,
And so emboldening someone um, to respond in that way, and they trust us. We are not
yeah,
trained professionals, but we are trusted professionals.
yeah,
And so, really elevating and being mindful of that position in our clients' lives is important. And my hope is to shift those conversations in a way, allow people to hold space and just be friends in a way that allows people to continue that trusted opening that they do, but with intention, knowing
yes,
that you don't have to be the therapist. You can be the friend or the
yeah,
support that knows the
oh, brilliant,
therapist, that's
yeah,
able to direct to the refuge or the hotline here. And so part of what we offer on our training on our website is downloadable resources that you can print and have available. We have a guidebook that we created with a curriculum provider called Pivot Point that breaks down all of the information that we have in our training in a printable resource that you could have tucked away in the break room or somewhere safe, that allows you to reference and go back and say, okay, in that training, I remember hearing that this, or this could be a sign that perhaps they're being isolated, or, um, I know that my client is very social and suddenly she's pulled back from all of her best friends and um, her family members, and she seems like she's kind of tiptoeing around her partner and seems a little afraid to ruffle his feathers. Is that something that is a sign? And they're able to pull it out and say, okay, these things are checking the box, and then here is the number that I can direct them to,
yeah,
or printing something that they can put covertly in a changing room, or someplace that feels safe for someone to look. And even if they're not ready to have a conversation, it gives them the awareness that they're in a safe space.
yeah, definitely, absolutely. And you explain that beautifully because I think for anybody that doesn't, understand abuse or has not experienced it, it is very difficult to know how to broach those conversations because it's there's no kind of linear or timeline where you're gonna all of a sudden just, oh, that's it, it's abuse, of course it is. It takes time for a lot of people, and some people can need reassuring or supporting or signposting more than once, and it can be various forms of abuse because I don't know, I think from episodes I've done previously, and I talk to people from the USA, and it seems very similar over there as it is over here in terms of when we talk about domestic abuse, people's minds go straight to the physical.
Exactly.
And what we're trying to do is say, actually, and what I've tried to do with the podcast is say, well, actually, have you thought about the financial aspect of it, the emotional, the psychological, all those things that for a victim or survivor might say, well, they never hit me, so it can't be abuse. And so if somebody was sitting there, in the chair and they said, well, they've never hit me, so it can't possibly be abuse. And for a professional to be able to go away and say, actually, I think maybe by the sounds of it, if you don't have to, but if you want to, you can contact this organization, or your friends and family can, if you don't feel that it's the right time for you to do it, etc. It's all those lovely subtle nuances that you're putting in there, that is giving that person, really what we want is give them back that control, isn't it? Because that's the thing that they've had taken away. And not saying for 1 second physical abuse doesn't occur, of course, we know it does. But so often the psychological, the emotional, when you speak to victims and survivors, it's those elements that take a lot longer to process, to come to terms with, to start to move forward. Because if your self-worth, your self-esteem, all those things are constantly being beaten down, and you're told you're not good enough, or you're not pretty enough, or you're not, young enough, or whatever it is, that has that mental scar, doesn't it, for people? And I think knowing that abuse is multifaceted, comes
Right.
in so many different forms and guises, that having those resources to be able to say to people, well, I still think, maybe you do need this support, and like you say, doing it in that lovely compassionate way, so important.
Well, and it rarely starts with the physical abuse. You know,
Yeah.
it and depending on where you catch someone in the cycle, we know that it's secular. And so depending on if someone's kind of in the walking on eggshells part, or if they're in the honeymoon phase again after maybe a big blow up that they had a couple of weeks ago, it may be something that it takes time for it to fully unfold. And it can take a long time for someone to really grasp what it is that they're in, because it becomes so normalized. It's something that if you are living it day to day, it may not be clear or evident to you. And I know in my personal situation, it absolutely was not. I know that it was education about domestic violence from someone that I trusted and who I was close to
Yeah.
that ultimately opened my eyes. And even then, it took me a period of time to research and then second guess and question. And we cycled through many times from that day when she said the word abuse until the day that I finally left.
Yeah.
But because you have that hope that things will change. And so
Yes.
a lot of it is being able to recognize it and even very gently just say, that sounds really painful, hearing them and affirming what they're saying, that doesn't sound quite right.
Yeah.
Or very gently maybe pushing back on a narrative that they're being fed, not in a pushy way, because we know that it's a very personal decision. You
Yeah.
can't make that decision for someone, and you don't know when the right time will be. You want it to be their process and their decision when it's time, um, but allowing them to know that you are that person that's there and that cares about them and wants the best for them, and maybe not being afraid to use the word abuse if given the opportunity,
Yeah.
because there's real power in language. And I know, again, to pull back from my personal experience, I had people that loved me that said, this is a bad relationship, or a hard relationship, or a toxic relationship. But the thing that really mobilized me to do that research was the word abuse. And I I really, I think the more we can reduce the stigma around it and be willing to use real language when it's appropriate. You don't want to throw it around all the time, but it really holds a different weight when used. And I know that it's what allowed me to safety plan and allowed me to be very cognizant of what I was in when I was going through the process of leaving. And my situation was not physically abusive until the very end. I mean, in hindsight, there were moments where we would get in the car and he would drive recklessly or, way too fast. And I know now that that is a form of physical abuse. But
Yeah.
as far as the actual bruises or the things that I, in my head, called abuse, I did not experience the really dangerous part until the very end.
Yeah.
And so we know that the first couple of weeks to couple of months after someone finally takes steps to leave are very dangerous.
Yeah.
And so it is important for someone to really recognize that and know that what they're going through is that, in
Yeah.
fact, and then knowing what the professionals are, what the resources are in the community, because
Yeah.
no one is alone if they know what those support systems are.
Absolutely. And I always, think when people are very open about their own experience, it's so important for the people to hear because I think sometimes we come together as professionals and it sounds like we're telling people what to do. We're not. And you're quite right. You're talking about your own experience and from that lived experience angle, I think it's so important that people understand that when you do have that personal on that lived experience level, you understand it on a much, much deeper level. And so from there, you're able to use that professionalism along with the lived experience to create something that you've created now, which is incredible. And I love what you were saying then, in terms of somewhere like the salon, for example, that might be the only chance somebody gets to have a conversation where their partner isn't there, isn't listening to everything that they're saying. And it isn't like we see in the movies, it all happens in one go and then they flee and that's the end of it. It doesn't happen like that. And again, you're 100% right. We know that the risk increases hugely when somebody makes that decision. And I always say, it's not easy to leave for anybody and it depends on your situation. But if you do, having those resources and having those support mechanisms in place is so important because it's a very, very difficult time. And for a lot of people, I think something that doesn't get talked about enough is, like, I think you touched on this earlier, is people want it to work. Victims want that relationship to work. Well, you don't go into a relationship, especially if it's a long-term relationship, thinking, well, if it ends, so what? You've invested time, you've invested love, you've invested everything that you have physically, emotionally, everything else. And if there's children involved as well, it's not that straightforward. And for many victims and survivors, they can feel that coercive element from their partner. Well, if you leave, I don't know what I'll do to myself, and or the driving recklessly in the car, like you say, all these things to make you think, actually, will it be worse if I leave? Maybe better the devil I know, stay where I am, and
Yes.
put up and shut up as we. I don't know if you say that over there, but we say that over here. Put up
Yes.
and shut up, yeah.
That's exactly it. Like, and there's a dependency that's created. You think about the five people you see consistently, day after day. If one of them, for any reason, suddenly is not in your life, you feel that loss. There's a connection that's developed, and whether it's a financial dependency, whether it's that emotional hook that they have in you, maybe you've been vulnerable enough with them that they know what your past is, what your traumas have been, what your complicated relationships that you might have with other people are, and they know exactly how to plug that in and how to keep you hooked. And
Yeah,
so,
yeah,
um, yeah, so it's hard. It's expensive to find a new place to live. A lot of people think I can't afford to get another house or another apartment or flat. If I do leave, how do I afford that? How do I pull my children away from this person who might be a good parent? It's often we try to keep our children shielded from conflict, and so it might be that you've either been protective enough that they don't see what's going on,
yeah,
or perhaps the abuser is controlled enough around the children that it's all behind closed doors when they're
mm,
asleep or when they're not around.
yeah, yeah,
And there's a million reasons why people choose to stay.
mm,
And being able to recognize and inform my industry as well that it could take an average of 7 times to leave. And so there may be a lot of starts and stops and being patient with people, not shutting the door or being so forceful with advice that they don't feel like they can come back to you because you might be the only safe place, like you
Yeah.
said.
Yeah, and that's so true. And you know, you just hit the nail on the head there again. It doesn't necessarily mean that if someone opens up that they're ready there and then. It may be that they come back 3 weeks down the line. It may be they come back 6 months, a year down the line and start to process things. It is so individual, isn't it? I mean, the irony is all the behaviors of abusers are kind of textbook. You know, if you got every victim and survivor in one room and they all started talking about it, and go, oh God, yeah, oh yeah, 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 you know, you
Yes.
can pull it all together. But the actual situation itself for each individual is unique to them, and how we respond to things is different. How I might respond to something will be different to the way you respond to something, and so how we react to things is very important. And I think, you know, having that safe place where you're saying it doesn't have to be now, it can be when you're ready, when the time is right for you, but knowing that that support is there. That's, I think, for so many victims and survivors, and again I think it's probably worldwide, is they do feel alone. And like you were saying before, you know, and they're not alone. There's an army of people out there who understand it, who get it, who know that they're not going crazy, you know, they're not making it up, it's not all in their head, it's real. But it takes time, and it takes time to process. And I think knowing that that kind of support is there when
Yes.
they're ready at a time that suits them, it's just is amazing. And it's almost like, because that support is there under the surface each time they come, it may be that they open up just that little bit more each time. And that's the key. You know, you can't expect, and if anybody sort of who's listening thinks it's a case of that's it, you've said it, so everything comes blurting out and you, oh, done and dusted, it's not like that. It's a process. And anyone who kind of understands that trauma informed approach of trauma is a very, very complicated thing. You know, jumping because a cupboard door slams, or a car screeches, or you get in a car and someone's driving recklessly and it takes you back to those moments of your ex-partner doing that. It's very, very complex. And I think that's why it's so important that the services you provide are there to everyone when they need it. It's, yeah, I love that.
Well, and I hope that anyone listening here, we created a training. So to back up, in
Yeah.
2017, we started in-person trainings and we did dozens and dozens of trainings. We had reached maybe, I don't know, a couple of hundred people in our community, which we were thrilled about at the
Yeah, amazing.
time. We very quickly realized that based on the feedback we were receiving, that it needed to be spread a little bit wider than what we could reach in that setting. I was offering them on my day off. I would go and, I still work full time behind the chairs. So carving out those windows to go and sit with people, it was wonderful, but my time was limited. So
Yeah.
I thought, well, if we could do this statewide, if we could pass a law like another state here, Illinois had passed, and require this for beauty professionals, I think that we could reach people across the state. And I didn't know exactly how we would do it, but we started working on that legislation back in 2020 and had amazing momentum. I was going to the General Assembly here and talking to lawmakers and sharing my personal story as a survivor, but also as a beauty professional, explaining why it was so important. And very shortly after that, this thing called COVID happened,
Yeah.
and it stopped us completely in our tracks. But we had a few things to figure out. One of the things was that lawmakers said, we know that domestic violence is a huge issue, and we like this idea, but we want it to be an easy ask. We don't want it to be a burdensome requirement for your industry. And so we want it to be short and it has to be free. And ideally, we want it online. And the online piece was very daunting because it was before COVID. It was before we
Yeah.
knew how to do this the way that we're doing right now. And um, during that period, I was actually appointed to our governor's economic recovery group, which was addressing how to reopen during a global pandemic, how to open
Yeah.
up salons and businesses of all kinds.
Yeah.
And as the salon representative, I connected with a company called Barbicide. They were the leading disinfectant company here in the US, and they had just launched a website that offered their disinfectant training online. And through that connection, I met their lead educator and said, is this something that you might be willing to provide on your website? Is there a way for us to provide this education and have you hosted on your platform? And they said immediately, yes, we would love to. So we launched our online training. We had a very limited budget and we put it together back in October of 2020 during Domestic Violence Awareness Month. And overnight, we went from reaching hundreds of people here in Nashville, Tennessee, to, I believe, in the first 3 days, we had reached 5,000 people
Wow.
globally.
Oh,
So,
that's
not
amazing.
just here in Tennessee, but on your side of the pond and beyond. I mean, we had people in the UK, we had people in Malaysia, we had people across South America and Portugal. And, it just absolutely blew my mind because Barbicide had quite a broad reach. They had sent out an email and put it on their social media, and suddenly, to your original point about how the signs are universal,
Yeah.
we had people everywhere saying, I'm so grateful for this information, for this knowledge. And yes, I've experienced it and I've seen the signs. And we had people from many other industries that also started to take this training. And it was important to us that we provide the international resources, which we do. So if you go to the training, you'll find we actually have a wonderful couple of ambassadors that are based in the UK and Ireland. And so they're able to speak to the importance of it, but also the resources that are available in your community. And we have the downloadable tear sheets with the numbers in the UK and Ireland and across Europe and Australia, all over the place. So you should find the resources that you need.
Yeah.
And while some of the signs are my industry specific, if you have a client behind the chair, there's some things that you can listen and say, okay, they're talking about being in a salon or being in a barber shop or a nail salon. But the signs are so universal that I've even had people that are attorneys or that are medical professionals or teachers take it and say it was very concise and very helpful and help to just open eyes about what the signs are and
Yeah.
what the resources are. So I want to speak to your audience and say, please take our training and please spread it as widely as you would like. It is very concise and it's free and it's online. So if someone knows of the survivor who might be navigating a situation right now or the victim who needs that resource, please don't hesitate to share our Shear Haven training.
Yeah.
And hopefully it will direct someone that needs it to a resource that they can find that assistance.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I love the fact that, like you say, it's about it being concise because I think part of the problem when we talk about abuse is it's such a huge topic. It scares people and they think, oh, I'm intimidated by this conversation. And so keeping it concise, keeping it to those points where, if people then want to look a bit deeper into it, they can do, but to have that kind of base to go from
Yes.
is so important. And I think if more and more organizations did what you're doing, which is let's go concise start from there. And also, you're more likely to get organisations to sign up and do it when they're, let's be honest, we know a lot of organisations go, oh, I don't have the time for this, I don't have the time for that. But actually, if it is concise and it is there and it is all, neatly wrapped up, they can just go ahead and do it. And like you say, it's not going to take them forever. And that's what's important. And also, it's not going to impact them on that level where they think, I don't know if I can understand this. It's got
Yes.
to be it's got to
Simple.
be approachable, hasn't it? Yeah, it's got to be accessible and approachable. I think the way you've gone about it is absolutely fantastic, and that's what people need. And then they can always do more research, as you did yourself, and find out more. But we
Yes.
need that starting off point, don't we? We need that kind of the early stages. What's going on? But I love the fact as well, like you say, it's you're now everywhere, which is brilliant, and that's how it should be. And not, like you say, moving on from the beauty industry as well. So like you said, and we know family law, it's if some solicitors could just even understand the basics of abuse and not just look at it as, oh, it's a toxic relationship, therefore this person is behaving this way in the courtroom. Actually, if they knew the basics of it, they would understand that that's not what that person is doing, and that person is living through trauma and through abuse, etc. And as you
Yes.
say, medically as well. Yeah, it's every system needs to, and every organization and everybody just needs to be able to understand and spot those signs. And also, so if for example, if family and friends wanted to learn a bit more, they can go and do the training as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'll say a lot of the conversations that I personally hold behind the chair, which I talk about this a lot. Of course, my clients know that this is my passion project and know that I now wear the hat at times of being the advocate, or we, we passed a law here in Tennessee that requires this for all of my profession. And now we're also working on federal legislation here in DC that will hopefully incentivize states to pass laws like we did. So I have a lot of these conversations with lawmakers on a regular basis or other advocates statewide that want to do what we did. So people in my chair will open up about they're very interested in this topic. And sometimes it's for my client themselves, but often it's for the people that they love that are, or their colleague, their friend, their brother or sister, their parent
Mm.
that they are concerned about or that they've seen little glimpses of themselves, but haven't quite had enough context to piece it all together.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so I always have the printed resources available to give someone a brochure and say, you can hold on to this. Feel free to reference it or, share this with that person that you love. Or here's a handful of them. Take them to your workplace and
Yeah. Yeah.
put them in your break room.
Yeah.
And uh, I feel like people are really hungry for it because we know if it affects certainly 1 in 4 people here in the US, 1 in 3 people globally, one in 3 women, I should say, globally, that that that's a wide net. That is a immense amount of people in any community. Anytime you have a group of at least 4 women, you look
Yeah.
around that group and say, at least one of you, maybe more, might be the one that needs that
Need that.
resource.
Yeah.
And we know that if we're reaching that number of beauty professionals here locally, that in that group, there's a significant amount of them that might be the one that actually is touched by the resource.
Yeah.
And that, some of the stories that have come through have been the person that saw themselves in the training.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
um, my hope is that we're able to reach our industry as more of a standard, as a way to upskill our industry in a really significant way that allows the younger generation that's coming in to have a broader preventative movement.
Yeah.
Think of the
Yeah.
power of being able to reach thousands of young people in a community with domestic violence awareness. And we know a lot of the men that also experience it or that might be the perpetrator likely experienced it as children in the home.
Yeah,
And
and that,
so,
yeah,
yeah,
absolutely. And
breaking that
it's,
cycle.
yeah, it is, and it is so important. I think more than ever now there is that chance of breaking that cycle because we are getting to that point where children are learning more and young people about healthy relationships. But I think if victims and survivors also understand, and family and friends also understand what abuse actually is, the chances are of breaking that cycle even more because then it's possible, like you say before, a parent may come across as a very good parent, but actually it's okay to say to your children, you can love that parent, but you don't have to accept the behaviour that's displayed. So if they are displaying behaviours that are unacceptable, that are abusive, it shouldn't be a case of, well, it's your parent. We know for decades it's been, well, it's your parents, so you just have to deal with it because they're your
Yeah.
parent and you do as you're told. Whereas actually now, because victims and survivors are reaching out for support and they are trying to understand it. And like you say, we know that for anyone that's experienced it, the situation they were living in was normal to them. But when you come out of that fog and you start thinking, actually, this isn't normal. The way I was spoken to, the way I was treated, the way that they behaved towards me, etc., and like you say, the children as well, then you start to see that that's not normal behavior, and then you can, lead on to that support for the children, so that they, as we don't want any child or young person to end up in an abusive relationship because they think it's normal because that's the pattern they've seen throughout their lives. And I love the fact that the training can also, as for family and friends, I think that's such a key point, and it's something that we focus on a lot over here. Is I think you touched on it earlier when you were saying about the things that people say, your own family say things, and it might be, oh, well, they're toxic, or, oh, I could have seen them coming a mile off, or all these really unhelpful, really
Yes.
unhelpful
Yes.
things that people say. And you're like, oh, okay, no, maybe not. Because all you're doing then is putting that blame and shame back on the victim and saying, well, I could see it, so how come you couldn't? But they're not in your shoes, they're not living your life. So making sure that work colleagues, family, friends, whoever, that they have a better understanding. So when it comes to, as we were saying before about language, it's important the language that we do use around individuals who've experienced abuse, because they have a right to be treated with respect and decency just as much as anybody else does. But unfortunately, very often the victims and survivors don't see their own worth, so they allow people to say, well, that relationship was wrong for you, I could have told you. So we now need to actually be able to say to family and friends, actually, you're the ones that need the training, you're the ones that need to understand
You
it.
need the training.
You need it.
Exactly.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right.
I love that. I think it's brilliant. And I genuinely love the fact that what you're doing now, you started off, and it's lovely for people to hear something that started off as an idea has grown into what it is now. And it just shows that when you have that passion and when you really want to see something grow to its potential and do what you're doing now, it's wonderful. And it's lovely hearing success stories.
Oh, thank you. I'm a very small part of a movement, of a team, I'll say, and I'm grateful that, yeah, I think sometimes that nudge is placed on your heart, or that story will resonate with you to say, okay, this may not be my lane, but if it's possible, if if there's a possible movement that can be born out of a little nudge here, what else is possible? I hear the most incredible stories in this line of work. All of us in the domestic violence awareness community are in our own little lanes and taking our own personal experience and creating change, meaningful change in our own little pocket of the world, or
Yeah.
our community. And I'm so inspired by every single one of the stories I hear. It's incredible. And I think there's real power in survivors that are able, not every survivor is able to share their story safely, but
Yeah.
my
Mhm.
abuser is no longer here. And he took his life when we were um, going through our breakup. I had a very young child and I had just opened my business. And when it became clear that I wasn't able to stay, I and took steps to leave, things unraveled pretty quickly and pretty dramatically. And there were very serious threats that were made, including to take his own life. Um, and I knew just enough to know that my son and I were not safe. And so we went into hiding. We ended up getting a security guard and an order of protection, which I knew ultimately uh, was a piece of paper. I knew that it was something that gave me a little bit of protection. I knew that I could call law enforcement if I needed to, but um, I I knew that it was very important that we stay safe. And ultimately, he ended up taking his own life. And in that moment, I knew that my son and I were very fortunate to be alive because of the threats
Yeah,
that were made.
yeah,
And um, I know that it's a very daunting process to walk through that type of season, but that there is incredible life on the other side of it. And I have a wonderful husband who's so supportive of this work, and another beautiful child who, I'm grateful every single day for this family that I have today. But I also know that I am in a unique position to share the story. Um, and with my son's uh, blessing at this point, this is also his story. And so I as he's now a 20-year-old man, being able to get his permission to um, know that his story is part of this hard
yeah,
path. But I know that the signs and the process that I went through are not unique. I know that so many people listening to my story can say, that is my story. And I don't have someone around the corner who's waiting on me or that I'm still co-parenting with. And that is a privilege. I'm able to kind of open up in that way because I'm safe to.
yeah,
And I feel an obligation to speak for my community of survivors and victims in that way because of that ability. So um, yeah, so for those, not everyone can do it, but I'm grateful that I am in a position to kind of open up and share in that way.
I honestly, you're making me emotional now. You are. I think, sharing what you've shared and being that, really, you're the voice for the voiceless, for those that can't share their stories, and to go through what you've gone through. And we know that a lot of perpetrators, a lot of abusers will say, I'll take my own life, but then to actually go ahead and do it, and the impact not only on you, on your child as well, how you then navigate all of that. I mean, your bond must be incredibly strong, which is incredible. And you're obviously an amazing mother who's been able to be there for him. And I'm so pleased that you've met somebody and you've got a lovely relationship and another child. I mean, it is just such a beautiful kind of, I'm not saying ending, because I think you've got a long way to go in terms of all the amazing things you're going to keep doing. But it's a lovely part of your journey that you're on now, that you are in a good place, and for people to see that, and people will be able to relate to your story and say, okay, well, this has happened, but that doesn't mean I can't then move forward and be happy in life and have a life I deserve, a life I deserve to live. And I just think that everything you've experienced and everything you've shared is just beyond phenomenal. And you do it all with a beautiful smile as well.
Oh,
You do, you do. You're amazing. I can't thank you enough. And for anybody that's listened, I think anyone's very, very fortunate to have been able to listen to this today. And I am so, so grateful to you. And I know this isn't the end for us. Our paths will cross again, I'm sure. Not sure how we will, but we will. We will. It's
yes,
not the end of the road
1,000.
for us. Oh, but
Um,
Suzanne, you're amazing. And if you could give anybody, so I hate doing this kind of like one piece of advice because there's like 50,000 pieces of advice you want to give. But if you could sort of, if anything else you wanted to add, please, please feel free to.
oh, thank you. I'm so grateful for this opportunity. And I would encourage people listening, of course, to check out our website. It's sheerhaventraining.org. We'll link it, I'm sure, in the
Yes.
podcast.
Yeah.
Um, get certified and share this as widely as you can. This is a grassroots movement. Every single share on social media, any single share of, sending it through a text to a friend or your beauty professional makes such a big difference. And um, yeah, so I would just say for those that are listening that are still in the cycle themselves, to keep putting one foot in front of the other and know that you're not alone, that we are a strong and mighty community of supporters around you, and just to keep moving, that there is beautiful life on the other side. And I know it's not easy, but there are resources, there are helpers and caring people that want to be that support. So allow yourself to be supported if you need it. And if you're in the position like I am to be in a safe, solid place, keep your eyes open, get educated, and approach the world with a little more compassion and empathy, knowing that there are people all around us that may be in the middle of a really difficult situation and need us. So, just
Absolutely.
approaching the world with that space, that heart.
That's a beautiful way to sum it up. Absolutely stunning. I couldn't add anything else. That was perfect. It absolutely was. Keep moving. I love that. I absolutely love that. Oh, Suzanne, thank you so, so much for taking the time today to be with me. It's been an absolute honor and privilege.
Oh,
Thank
thank
you.
you so much.
Thank you.
Where